right.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Lynette Davis, and I am joined by
Dr. Angela Clack. I'm missing my cue. Good evening.
I was all like slow motion. And we are your hosts for your Mental Wellness Matters.
We need an applause button.
You're my cup of tea. Okay, so tonight I titled it Activism and Mental Health because the discussion tonight is centered, I should say it was triggered by a post that we read, and then we'll kind of let the conversation go from there, about a young man. Do you remember his name off the top of my head?
Yeah, I'm probably going to, but I think I'm going to probably say it wrong. I think it's Marshawn Markel. I think I'm saying it wrong, but I think it's Marshawn, something like that.
Okay.
Yeah, Marshawn, because I found out he's a twin, so the brothers mixed something else. So.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I think it's Marshawn. Yeah, Marshawn.
Okay.
McCarroll.
Yes, there you go. You got it.
All right. So we saw that it was in the news that this young activist who was, I believe, 22 or 23 years old, died on the Ohio State House steps. And so we wanted to start the conversation just talking about that, and then just going deeper into the broader concept about activists who are out there on the front lines doing, whatever they are, whatever their cause are. And apparently besides the Black Lives Matter, he was also an activist for homeless. Yeah. So he founded an activist group called Pursuing Our Dreams, which was aimed to help the homeless population. So he wasn't just any one particular type of activist. He did activism work in various arenas, as many activists do, actually. So we're going to start talking just about this, and then, like I said, and then we'll kind of branch out. So I'm going to kind of put it out there. We're not here to say whether or not this is accurate or not. Right. We're just talking about what we have in front of us right here. This is not the type of conversation to come up with I think this or I think that, and here's my opinion. We're going to talk about the topic tonight. The topic is because it's relevant regardless of what any of us think about activists and their mental health.
Absolutely.
Okay, so I'll go ahead and start. What did you think about this when the article first came across your desk?
Well, I'm glad. First of all, I want to thank you for the disclaimer, because we're not here to talk about all of the emotions that are going to come from the circumstances surrounding the event. So we're not here to dispute conspiracy theories or whatever. We're going to talk about this young man's life. We're going to honor his servitude, and we're going to talk about how that can impact people when you work so tirelessly for a really long time and what that's called. So thank you for that disclaimer. Saddened, I think, like everybody else, very saddened. I'm always, for me, reactive to people who take their life. And for whatever reason that they get to that place, that's the only choice that they feel like they had. And whatever people's views on whether suicide's a choice or not, I'm not going to go there. I know as a mental health therapist what I believe, and I'm always here to figure out, well, what can we do to educate people so that's not a choice. For a young man who had such a rewarding life, and that so many people had so many nice things to say about him, the sad part for me was what I did see, and it was reported as his last comment on his Facebook post, which was, and I hope I'm probably not saying this right, but I think it was, the comment was, the demons won out today, or something like that. And
yes.
when I hear remarks like that, that means that that person's been struggling and tormented with these demons for a very long time, because he said today. That means they've been there. And people may not know how long he's been really struggling. And then these things, or something, or cumulative stress, pushed him over the edge. And I think it is noteworthy where he committed suicide, how he did it. I do believe there's a message there. But the fact that he did it is still, nonetheless, is no less sad or heartbreaking for, I'm sure, his family, his friends, and the people who worked beside him in the cause.
Mm-hmm. For me, when I read it, typically when I read articles such as these, just any article regarding suicide, period, I don't know why, but I always read the comments, mainly because I really like to know what people are thinking and what they have the courage to say behind their computer screens. But it gives me a glance into the thought process of the people that we live with, that we dwell with in our society. And it gives me somewhat of a perspective of, okay, now how do we move forward through these different types of commentary? Because the comments are coming from somewhere, and there's a particular thought process and to have if you're going to spew those type of comments. Right. And one of the biggest things for me that triggered me wanting to really pursue this topic was the question on whether or not he had mental health issues. And it sparked another conversation in essence about how when people actually do have mental health issues, how people kind of they don't want to talk about that. They want to ignore that fact as if these issues do not come up in the communities. And that's what triggered something for me. So I was trying to kind of stay on the safe line there. But that's what was most, I would say that was the thing that intrigued me the most. Like, okay, hypothetically speaking, let's say a lot of these activists who are out there, you know, there's a large group of different types of activist groups. And what if a small percentage of them actually do struggle with mental illness and it's going underreported and unnoticeable, and nobody's really talking about it? What do we do in those instances? Because it's not unlikely.
Well, it's interesting because I love doing these topics because I can get into research. Often, because I do the therapy side, I don't get to do the research side. There are people, scholars, sociologists, particularly minorities, who are doing research. So there's a word for this. And it's interesting because I thought about it today, because I did a Periscope yesterday, and we used the word battle fatigue, but we were talking about it in the context of when you feel so drained in your marriage and you want to give up because you've been doing it for so long. And I thought about that today. And then doing research for our talk today, I realized that there are African-American, other scholars out there of minority descent who are calling this, and it's a word for it. I'm so glad. And it's called racial battle fatigue.
Wow.
It has a definition. Let me read the definition. This is so interesting. So it is, the symptoms are anxiety, exhaustion, depression as a result of racial oppression and marginalization at a personal and systemic level. Mm-hmm. And there are people writing articles and doing research and books on this very, very topic. And it's akin to what the DSM would call PTSD.
Right.
But they've given it a different name. And I like that they've given it a different name in a sense, because it makes people acknowledge and feel like, okay, that's exactly what it is. Don't make me feel like I have a clinical syndrome. This is what it is. And it fits. And think about his story, because one of the things that I also read is that he was homeless for 3 months after high school, which is what gave him the motivation and incentive to do more advocacy for homeless. So think about what his life might have been like for 3 months, not having a stable place to live, and what he saw or what he had to do to survive. And then the next years, tirelessly working for the homeless and other groups, and then starting his own advocacy. This is what happens. We're exhausted. And if we don't acknowledge it, it turns into a clinical condition. So yeah, we got a name for this thing, guys. We just got to get the word out there. And when we see people in the trenches and they're suffering and they won't go home and they won't get health care, or they won't take care of themselves with good self-care, we got to step in. We are our brother's keeper. We got to step in.
Yeah, definitely. I love that. You know, it's funny because I started doing research looking for a term too, because the first thing that came to my mind when I first saw it was compassion fatigue.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, I bet you there's something similar to that, but of course I didn't have time to fully look. So I'm glad you yes. So I'm glad that you brought that up, because sometimes I think if we do have a name to it, it's, you can kind of, it really solidifies something in you so that you can go, okay, this is what it is. I am not crazy.
Right. It makes it real. Yeah. That's right.
Exactly. And you know what? The not funny thing is, but I read somewhere else on another site, and I'm just trying to see if I kept that note. But somebody said something, and I thought it was very interesting. And I'm sorry, I can't credit because I don't remember where I pulled it. I pull sources from like so many different places, from articles. But they said activists are all too often seen to put themselves last when it comes to caring about people and the planet. The macho attitude that I'm fine when they're clearly not, or hassling overworked people to do more work when they're trying to make some time for themselves is counterproductive. And when I read that, I was like, wow, you know, that they really said it. The thing is, people who are doing this, not only, first of all, they're fighting against the grain, because obviously you're called an activist for a reason. You're doing something that's basically, you're going to get opposition, and that's draining. It's draining, it's tiring. And most people don't do this work because fear of all the possible things that come with when you are pioneering for a cause, especially if it's one that's not really celebrated or approved by mainstream society. So, or I should say society members with power. Let me put it that way. So where was it? So I'm just like looking at that quote again. I'm like, I feel so bad. I don't know where I put it. So, and I want to talk about that too, because I think we talked about that in the last discussion, especially when it came to men. But you know what? I do think that more men will say that more often than women. But what is up with this? I'm fine. You know, how do we as advocates try to get, you know, sometimes I feel like we have advocate fatigue because you want so much so for the awareness and, you know, you want to help, especially, you know, I'll speak for myself. The reason why I came into the field, so, you know, in the first place was because I wanted to help people closest to me. I could look around and go, something's not right here. I want to help. But it seems that at home, where you want to help the most is where they least accept your help. So, I want to talk about that a little bit, because I imagine that you get tired as an activist, not only because of all the opposition that you face, but also is draining to try to recruit more people to come to your cause, to come out of their shell, to come out of the closet, to advocate and really step up and do all the things that they're doing.
Yeah, and you know, you don't see many activists who are millionaires. I hate to say that. But so a lot of it's grassroots and a lot of it's recruitment at a very basic level. You're trying to get your friends, your family members, you're trying to do, now that we have social media, but back many years ago it was word of mouth, you know, flyers. You did a lot of footwork in activism, and over the years it takes a toll. But when you talk about how people want to say I'm fine, are you talking about the helpers themselves, like people who are doing the work?
Yeah, the activist himself,
Yeah,
when people, how are you? What's going on? I imagine maybe somebody saw that he was having an off day a couple times and said, "What's going on?
yeah,
How are you doing?" "I'm fine. I'm fine.
yeah,
Everything's
yeah.
fine."
You know, we as helpers do that sometimes because the perception is, well, we are supposed to be well, we're supposed to be strong, and so if we're weak, then the perception for the other person is, well, then you can't help me. And I think activists never want to be seen as giving up on the cause, as succumbing to the pressure, and also that the belief that so many people, a whole community of people, are depending on activists to make change, because a lot of us sit back and let activists do the work.
Right.
We'll put a like, or we may donate $5, but we don't get out there in the trenches and do the work.
Yeah.
And I think for that reason, activists probably feel like they have to stick out there. They have to do the work because who's coming behind them? Like, how many times have you heard the comment, there's never going to be another Martin Luther King, or never going to be
Yeah.
I hear that all the time. And it may not be, because at the level that people need to give of themselves tirelessly, maybe without payment, without kind of some kind of restitution or something given back. I don't know who is next to come and walk in those shoes. And I think the activists feel like they have to get out there and they have to maintain it. Just like mental health therapists, sometimes we don't recognize when we're doing harm because we refuse to acknowledge that we have an issue and get help, because the perception is that that's a bad thing. That's a bad thing. Self-care is a bad thing,
Yeah. Well, so in your experience, when you get, I'm sure you have probably had clients who were extremely resistant to wanting to seek help, especially if they were the helpers. And now I know it's slightly different because as a mental health professionals are told in their training, you need to also, as a part of your training, you need to do it too. Even those of us who were more low scale social services workers, because I'm not going to say social, or even social workers, they usually have trainings for us that we have to sit through. So, it's embedded in us. But what about those who, they're out? There's so many different circumstances that I can think of where people who are on the front lines of something feel like, I'm fine, I don't need any help, I don't need to talk to anybody. How do we even begin to address this issue to let people know it's okay? And how do we talk about these things without leaving comments about somebody who is an activist who decided to take their life, and leaving insensitive comments about how counterproductive that is to the cause?
Wow, that I didn't know. I haven't seen that. That's sad.
Yeah, I have. I've seen that a lot.
Wow. Okay. Wow.
I know I'm asking you a heavy question.
There's a couple of things embedded in that, but that's an extreme insensitivity to the toll that it takes for activists to do their job. If you really know what they do, some activists aren't. Again, they're just not the foot soldiers, and so it's easy for them to spread the word or share a like or share a photo. But when you're talking about people like I presume this young man was, who really did the work, his face was out there, people knew what he was about. That's a little different about the emotional toll that it takes on you. Now, that being said, not only was his work tirelessly, as a Black man, I can only imagine what else he endured in his life. So we just don't know everything he had on his plate. I don't know. I don't know everything that's went on for him. But part of what the definition of the racial battle fatigue is also, continuous microaggressions, micro assaults on a person's ethnicity, on a person's core sense of self as a minority. So it's not just their fight in the cause, it's everything about their core being that they've endured and suffered as a result of being a person of color. Mm-hmm. So that's the first thing. The second thing is, it is hard to get people to acknowledge that they need to take a break, or perhaps they need to get some help. It's really hard for people to do that because we are still, to this day, working on the stigma of mental health. We are still helping to educate people that it's okay to ask for help. It's okay to say, hey, I need a break. Can someone take over for a minute? And it's really hard to get people in professional positions to acknowledge that. And I don't know, other than what we're doing, conversations like this, educating the public, educating consumers, and educating our clients. I don't know how else other than education to get people to see how serious this is, and not to focus on being counterproductive to a cause, but to focus on, oh my gosh, what happened? Where did we lose track of this man? What happened? Could we have done something? Do we need to check on other activists? Who do we need to check on now? Because his life should not be in vain for that reason. Because now he's going to get a lot of judgment for how he left this world. But the message also is what got him to that place. And we need to check in on folks who are doing this work, who we think are okay, and they're not.
You know what? That presents an idea, because the thing is, for those who are behind the scenes supporting activist movements, who might do a donation, whatever, I imagine that some of the people who are doing that might very well be mental health professionals. Okay. I know that in the age of social media that they have all these different groups. Why not, as a social media, a mental health professional who's quietly behind the scenes, put yourself out there from your business perspective, from your profession perspective, and offer every once in a while, I'm here. I know that you are doing all this work. I am behind the scenes and I'm supporting, but I can lend a hand to your activism through the skills and the gifts that I already have. Maybe I'm not a boots to ground activist, good, but I'm a professional, and I know based off of these articles like this that you might have some activists who might need somebody to talk to.
That's actually a really good idea. Even if it started as a community, an online group, that's actually a great idea. Yeah, that's good.
So, yeah, like as you said, I was like, I mean, for crying out loud, that's what it's there for. So, exactly. And I think also, it's an opportunity for entrepreneurs who want to embed, I'm trying to think, who, I can't think of the term. I want to say social entrepreneurship, but there's a specific model when they embed certain social, let's just say social entrepreneurship for now, because I cannot remember off the top of my head. That's an opportunity for them. Maybe they might want to give back to causes and activism in a way that they can build these forums for people. The same way we're building forums for people to open up about mental health issues, period. Yeah. How about we very specifically niche it, Just tossing out some ideas.
Yep. I think the only thing I think that happens with that is, how do you reach the activists? How do you reach the people who need it? Because we can set up these groups and we can be accessible and available. How do we get to the people who need it and to help them to make sure that they access it? And I think that's with anything.
Yeah. And you're right. That's the question of the hour, because now, mind you, as I thought about the ideas, I already thought about some of the opposition. For one, we would still go back to that original argument of I'm fine. So, and then you get another case of fatigue for those who were like, okay, here's my part that I'm doing in this activism. Nobody's coming.
Right.
I did put myself out there.
Exactly. But if you call it something else, you might get it, because people aren't resistant to medical attention.
Right.
They're resistant to mental health. So if you do something like a physical wellness boot camp or something for activists, boots on the ground, if you call it something that's more heroic, that's more about the physical, they buy into that. They don't want to be labeled by mental health professionals.
Right.
So it's always about how you market it, what you call it, to get people in it.
Definitely. I mean, it could easily be like the activist hotline, you know, just to have somebody to talk to, you know, that's completely anonymous. So you don't feel like, you know, and it doesn't even have to say we're specifically talking about your mental health issues, because at that point, I'm going to guess they don't actually identify with having mental health issues. Because now we're going back to one of the original things is, especially in minority communities, about the underreported and underdiagnosed people of color who are not seeking professional help, who are not getting you know, diagnosed. So we actually don't even know what the real numbers are to even know whether or not they are having mental health issues. So,
well, I'll tell you what, I like your idea, and I'm curious to know what happens over the next couple of months from people who are more known in the activist world, like I'm trying to think of somebody. I got his picture in my, like Al Sharpton, like he's an activist, Jesse Jackson Jr. I'm curious about what they will push in the forefront to support people who are doing this work as a result of this young man taking his life. I want to see what people are going to do. Who's going to do what? Who's going to step up and speak on this? Other than us, the people who are more at the, I don't know what the front, I don't know, people like us who aren't really out there, but people who have a name, who have the resources, who can pull together folks who are in touch with activists. I wonder, I'm curious to know where this goes. And you know, I think the only place that I get a lot of my information from when it comes to that are shows like TV One or something like Roland Martin's News. So or maybe an article in Essence or Ebony or something. So I just want to see where this goes. You know, I'm just one person. If there's something I can do, if I can collaborate with someone and offering a support group for activists and make it more for people with compassion, fatigue, and open it up, I'm open to collaborating with folks. But I want to see what the people who have the resources do to support the people who are out there.
That is very interesting. When you said that, I was like, yes, that would be nice to see.
Yeah, we're calling them out.
We are
calling you out.
We are calling you out. What are you going to do? Are you going to address the mental health of your foot soldiers?
Yes. Yes. That's right. That's right.
Instead of looking at them as pawns on a chessboard. But well, we are, gosh, when did see, I'm blaming it on that whole original conversation about hair earlier, but I'm like, oh my God, it's 8:00 already. So I have nothing further to say. You know, I think we said our 2 cents. It's recorded. Those who were able to watch live, awesome. We posed some questions. We posed some ideas. I mean, I honestly did just think of them off the top of my head. So they're raw, which means you can polish them and create something from them. I encourage you to do so.
Yes. I'm looking for some feedback. I would love if people catch the replay. What's the feedback? What are people's thoughts about this? I don't know if people are on Blab or wherever, if people are having conversations about this very same subject, other than like the comments that you're reading on social media. I'm wondering if other people are having this conversation, and I just may not be privy to it. So I don't want to say that people aren't talking about it. I just haven't seen it and I'll just kind of keep my eyes and ears open for further conversation.
Yeah. I mean, same here. New stuff comes up all the time. Unfortunately, the last article that I saw about this young man in particular was about a week ago. So, yeah, that's media for you. But
yeah.
But here we are. We just brought up this conversation, so perhaps there's somebody else doing the same. And those who are watching, I don't know who came on later, but like I said, I do not have access to the comment section because my blab is extremely wonky. So
but I don't see anything.
Okay.
I don't see it. There's no comment.
Okay. So if you're seeing this, Dr. Clack, how can we get in touch with you? Especially if we invite you if you are a woman of color. And yes, this group in particular is for women of color. And I'm not sure. Well, you know what? It's your group, so you can tell them more about it. If they would like to comment more in a more private setting, how can they get in touch with you, Dr. Clack?
Right. So I know that we basically opened up the conversation about this young man's activism and him taking his life. But if there's a woman of color and she needs a little bit more support in terms of emotional wellness, you can find me on Facebook. There's a online community group, and we are growing. It's Women of Color and Our Shared Narratives, Embracing Wellness. It's a long title, but once you put in the first part, it'll pop up and you'll see the rest of it. But if you need something, if you have a question or a comment and you want to know more, my email is clackassociates, the number 2005@gmail.com. And then you can always find me on Facebook under my name. If you want to comment there, I'll also respond there as well.
Awesome. And I'm best reached on Twitter, actually. So
that's good. See, we're balancing each other out.
Yeah, because I'm like, you know what? Because I'm in Dr. Clack's group, so if you want to talk to little me, I'm in her group.
That's good. That's good.
But outside of that, if you're more on Twitter, then you can reach me on Twitter, and I can, if you want me to direct it, then I can easily direct it to Dr. Clack as well.
Yeah.
And I believe my Twitter handle is right here on Blab, but just in case, it's at Lynn D. Davis with 2 N's, Lynn with 2 N's. I throw people off with that. So, because my name actually only has 1 N, but I'm like, Lynn with 1 N didn't look right to me, so I put a second one.
Oh, okay. All right, gotcha.
But they don't need this on the recording. Maybe I could cut that out. Anywho, everyone, thank you so much for tuning in. Those who are watching the replay, thank you for watching this. Please share it.
Yes.
Awareness happens when we share. We have, even if we aren't a big name person, of a whole bunch of individual share content, it grows. And more people become aware, and bigger things happen. So keep planting the seeds, keep awareness going. Activists, keep up the good fight, and seek somebody like Dr. Clack, for instance, to if you need somebody to talk to. Don't be ashamed, don't be embarrassed, and don't feel like the world is on your shoulder, even though I know you probably feel like the world is on your shoulder, which I did. I get it. Yeah. But there are professionals here who are willing and ready to listen to you, to your story, and it won't take away from anything that you're doing. If anything, it will enhance it so that you can fight again tomorrow. Exactly. All right. So.
Let me leave I do want to leave one number, just in case it's in the middle of the night, whatever, and people are struggling. I do want to leave the number for the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline.
Perfect. Good job.
Which is 1-800-273-TALK or 1-800-273-8255.
Yes.
That way, if you can't reach a person, this is a 24/7 access.
Awesome. I'm so glad you remember that, because like at the end of all the posts, it always says yes. Awesome. So everyone, thank you so much for tuning in to this episode of Your Mental Wellness Matters. We'll be back again. So stay tuned. Please subscribe and take care of yourself.
Good night.
Good night.